P&G Shiksha is celebrating a significant milestone, 20 years of dedicated efforts to transform education in India. And today we are joined by Mr. Abhishek Desai, VP Brand Operations and Category Leader, Grooming P&G India, Dr. Varka Chalani, Clinical Psychologist, Ms. Inakshi Deva, Head CSR and Communications, P&G India. Hi everyone, welcome.
Thank you.
Abhishek, I'd love to start with you. It's been 20 years of P&G Shiksha. How has the focus evolved over the years? And when you look back at these 20 years, what are some of the unexpected learnings that you all have had along the way?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting and fulfilling journey. P&G Shiksha started in 2005.
Yeah.
In the early days, we were focused on building infrastructure, building schools, because that is what was missing, right? The basic infrastructure of schools was missing. And our early campaign and early work was built around building schools.
Yeah.
Over the years, this has evolved as infrastructure has caught up. We have shifted our focus to something which is not very easily visibly seen, but it is quite ubiquitous, which is learning gaps. Research says that, actually a recent study says that 50% of class 5 children cannot read class 2 text. Right, which is the learning gap.
Yeah.
So, and this learning gap manifests into different forms, right? And so sometimes the kids try to stay away from class, they hide from teachers, they try to bunk a particular class, or they don't even turn up to school at times. These are all signs of learning gaps. So we are choosing to spotlight now on this learning gaps so that we create awareness around it, and at the same time we work on the ground to remedy the gap or to erase the learning gap.
Right. That stat is very, very surprising. So I'd love to bring you in here, Dr. Varka. The stats that he just mentioned, 50% of class 5 kids can't read and class 2 text is shocking, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is going wrong with the cognitive or the emotional level in early years?
So there are two facets here as I see it. One could be that there could actually be dyslexia, which is a learning disability, which is not diagnosed.
Right.
Okay, but we are talking about simple learning gaps where emotions overwhelm. So for example, a person who feels anxious may not have the ability to use his intellect to be able to actually comprehend what he's reading,
Right.
okay, and then answers more out of anxiety, which can be quite muddled, okay. So in simple parlance, what Shiksha does is, because their outlook is to remediate simple gaps that exist, they are not focusing really on the neurological dysfunctional processing, and
Right.
that's great because that requires a different kind of remedial kind of intervention.
Right.
Okay, so I think what's happening cognitively to me is also that, well, unfortunately, the social media has taken over. There's just scrolling, which is random.
Yeah.
The depth of education, the kind of conceptual clarity, the kind of basic, kind of foundations are not really being set. And I think when I read about P&G Shiksha, what do you say, the entire focus is, I think, on starting with the grassroots, where they are trying to educate and inform in very creative and innovative ways.
Right.
So they are going to the basis of how to make learning fun, how to gamify education. They're using AI, they're using machine learning tools, and they're empowering the child to use different methodologies. So when learning becomes fun and knowledge-based, where it's being done for the joy of learning, there's a different kind of learning that happens.
Yeah.
It's more pleasurable. It's looking forward to building a curiosity, building some kind of, inquisitiveness. Oh, what next now? Okay,
Yes.
so I think cognitively we are struggling because of this easy distractibility, because of social media, very low short attention spans, okay, because of, again, constantly being bombarded with stimulus,
Yes.
okay. Then, of course, there are also sometimes challenges where there may be a real deficit, environmental and economic. Okay, not everyone has the same kind of resources. So today, hopefully, urban Indian children of 5th standard should be able to read.
Right.
The 5th standard curriculum.
Yeah.
Okay, rural India is struggling, and that's where P&G Shiksha comes in, and that's why it's doing such a marvelous job. Though the learning gap is not only simply about your ability to read, but I think it goes far beyond.
Yeah.
And I do believe, therefore, that it's important for us to try and take this across all India. so that it kind of facilitates even an urban learner to use the methods, okay, that MindSpark, that MindSpark has been able to kind of, evolve and give opportunities to the kids. So I think distractibility is the foundation, and I think sometimes poor concepts.
Yeah. I think as a mother, I also agree with you, because it's not only with my child, I see it with a lot of kids across, that this distractibility is so high. And also the retention span or the attention span, they're so used to quick information that sitting in a class and kind of focusing is becoming a challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I guess agree. So thank you for doing that. I'm hoping that it also reaches the urban population, I think it's required there as well. This new campaign also focuses on something that is so subtle but also very powerful, labeling, right? What are the reasons that made you focus on labeling this year?
So, Swati, we were talking earlier how learning gaps have many manifestations.
Yes.
Right. One of the manifestations, which we believe is the most detrimental one, is labeling. As we work with various parents, guardians, academicians, and a lot of our volunteers, we realized that this is an ubiquitous problem. Like you saw in the Shiksha film, Vikas has been called Kacha Nimbu, has been labeled Kacha Nimbu by his friends. And as we were going around and learning more about it, we realized that these terms exist in almost every language, which shows that the problem is quite universal. And that's why we said we need to create awareness about it, because creating awareness and bringing attention to the issue is the first step towards solving it. Our research found that only 28% adults completely understand learning gaps. So the first step is in educating them about making them aware about it, and labeling is one such challenge which can have a very detrimental impact on kids. It ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes we have seen that the more and more they hear it, the more they believe it.
Yes.
Right? So we want to get the kids out of this vicious cycle by providing them the right support at the right time.
I think a lot of parents even throw in words at home like, oh, you're so stubborn, or, you're just so difficult. And the child the child then goes on to believe that I'm a stubborn child and I will behave like that. That becomes a personality type, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it becomes his identity.
Yeah.
His or her identity. And then if you define yourself by these few adjectives, you suddenly actually start living them. Right? It becomes, as he said, a self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes all-encompassing, all-pervasive. So people say, for example, oh, my child is so fussy. Now, with the minute you use the word fussy, the connotation. So the labels carry connotations or meanings. And it's the meanings that are ascribed to these terms, which are so loosely used even by us with our own kids. Right? Like sometimes I used to say, don't be a duffer. I didn't literally mean that, but I'm not realizing that word may be hurting my child who's sensitized and sensitive. It's me who's non-sensitized and using a random term because I'm not, internalizing it to mean that you're of low IQ. But I don't know what she's internalizing. So it's very important. Therefore, language. One form of cognition besides imagination and symbolic thinking is language. And language has to be very carefully used. Now, I know people will say, oh, that becomes so kind of formal and becomes forced. But I think it's important we also train parents, teachers to use correct terminology.
I think it's also schools. I mean, schools are very loosely using terms. Calling kids things and names that, are you stupid that you just did that?
Right.
And children come back home, maybe somewhere it seeps down saying, maybe I'm stupid,
Right.
without kind of addressing why a child did that. So, it's something I hear so often as a parent that it's really frustrating.
But we also realize that we don't also measure our words.
Yes. It's a learning process. I think we're also unparenting to parent in this world.
Yes. And that's why I like the film a lot, because the term Kacha Limbu is not only something that the child uses, but even we, when we are talking, oh, my child is so weak. Now the child is within earshot. You're not calling him weak, but you're telling somebody else that, oh, he's so weak in math, example. So I'm creating prophecies or some that he'll say, oh God, forget math now. Anyway, my mother also thinks I'm weak. I'm not going to even attempt it.
Absolutely.
Right? Like you said, there are so many places these labels end up coming in, right? Including from us as parents.
Yes.
I remember my younger child, we used to say that, oh, you are very stubborn. And we used to say it very often. and it would just become, she would end up becoming stubborn more and more. And when we delved into it, actually, I came to know about learning gap only when I started working on P&G Shiksha, and it changed my perspective about looking at this issues. And that's when we realized that actually the younger one was probably seeking a little more attention. And just simple shifts like spending much more time with her, sharing a bedtime story with her, completely changed the way she was behaving, right? So I think a lot of it comes from what we do unknowingly, but we need to be more aware.
Yeah. And actually, I'd love to get you in at this point. Can you talk about, some specific interventions that Shiksha has implemented across different states? And are there any examples and stories that you could share with us with the kind of impact Shiksha has?
Absolutely. So I think we'll start with what we do today. Our objective is to improve learning outcomes.
Yes.
As Abhishek was talking, we have come a long way in getting children enrolled in schools as a country, and that's great news. But now that they're going to school, the focus is now on, yes, let's get them to school, but also ensure that they learn with understanding.
Yes.
There are many challenges that children, especially in underserved communities, face that Dr. Varkha also spoke of.
Yes.
If I could just add one more to it, I think many of these children are first generation learners, which means their parents haven't gone to school. They don't have a support system. So all they get is what they get at school, which means that if there is nothing else, there is rote learning happening. If there's nothing else, the child is just trying to grasp and grapple with whatever comes in front of them. So creating the right ecosystem of support is very important. Yeah. And what really helps them in the long run is conceptual understanding. So our focus, therefore, in whatever we are doing today to improve learning outcomes is focused on foundational literacy and numeracy, as we call it, which is completely integrated and aligned with the National Education Policy.
Right.
The important thing to note is everything that we study, if you think of it, comes back to language and math, right? Which forms the basis of all the subjects, everything that you can study. So if a child doesn't have these two conceptual understanding, everything that comes after that is not going to sort of sit well. So that's the focus. Now, coming to what exactly we do, we look at prevention of learning gaps and remediation of learning gaps. The first one becoming even more important, let's prevent the gaps from happening. Let's prevent a child feeling that they're, sort of lagging behind. Yeah. We do that, one, by ensuring that the learning environment is conducive. Having the right, benches and chairs to sit on, having an enclosed space that the child feels safe to come to, having colorful walls that they feel excited to sit around, having a blackboard and a teacher who's actually taking the time and, they can focus on what is, it might seem very simple to a lot of us who come from privilege, but it's not really a given in the schools and the communities that we go and work with.
Right.
The second one is early childhood education, which is really focused on ensuring that before a child enters a formal education system, we work with government schools, communities, mothers, Anganwadis to ensure that we are able to develop their, emotional skills, cognitive skills, pre-arithmetic, numeracy, simple things like how to hold a pencil, how to answer when someone asks your name. Again, a lot of this is almost given for us, but these children don't have that, right?
Because they operate from a privilege.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of it, even for us as we go and visit these communities, has been just recognizing the sheer privilege we have and then trying to understand what is the starting point on the ground. Right. We work with our partners, Pratham and Roundtable India, for the prevention piece. The remediation now, which as we also spoke of, 50% of children in class 5, we know are lagging behind. Right. That's a huge number. So we have community level programs, we have digital programs, right, which operate either in school or in community. The idea is, again, understand where the child is on their learning level. Do that baseline study to understand they can be at different levels also in two different subjects, right? Yeah. Their language and math can be at two very different levels. So co-create a plan with them that starts at their starting point and then get them along to a journey where they're able to remediate that. You asked for stories, and that's the best part. Yes, it's a very proud feeling for us that over 20 years we are impacting 50 lakh children. Yeah. But it's the specific impact on that one child that really makes us believe in what we do and want to keep going. Yes. One such story that is a part of our 20 Tales is that of Karthik. He's an autistic child from Telangana. And like ma'am was also sharing, it's just because of his need to learn in a different way. He was never able to keep up pace, right? To give an example, in class 6, class 7, he had difficulty even reading simple words in Telugu and English, which were his two main languages. Enter the digital learning that we have, the MindSpark tool, and with that, what he was able to do is actually bridge the gap. Not just get better academically, but also that gave him the confidence. It's that spiral effect that it almost creates. So it gave him the confidence, and now he's learning well, and also has his friends, he has fun. He's really a much more confident child overall.
I think we need more of these because, in my son's school, there was a child who was on the spectrum, but not entirely. And the school couldn't really grasp how to kind of deal with him. The parents had to remove him. They're homeschooling him, So if such initiatives actually spread in the urban cities as well, I think it'll do wonders and kids won't have to be pulled out and, be made to sit at home and not have that social
interaction
yes, with others.
which is equally important for development.
Yes.
So homeschooling has a big question mark actually. A lot of people doing it, not only because they have challenges at school, but a lot of people doing it for other various reasons.
Yeah.
Not so sure that that's really the healthiest way to go.
Yeah, I think the only worry that parent also has is social interaction. That's the biggest worry.
That is biggest.
And how it kind of impacts him as he's growing up.
Yeah.
But of course, these examples, tell us the story of how impactful the entire campaign has been for you guys for the last 20 years. But there are other brands also who support education, right? What makes P&G Shiksha so different in the long-term approach?
I think the answer lies in your question. It is the long-term approach.
Yes.
We have been at it for 20 years and we have been single-mindedly focused on education.
Right.
We have figured that when you're single-mindedly focused on something, you keep on getting better at it because we now know what are the issues on the ground and how the issues have evolved as well. So we've stayed committed to it. Our brands have stayed committed to this cause. And that is why we have been able to make a difference by impacting the lives of, like Inakshi said, 50 lakh children, right? Which is a huge number.
Absolutely.
And we will continue to be at it. I do believe there is a lot more to be done, but we have come a long way because we have been focused on it.
Yeah, and the motivation to bring the change. It's not just something you're doing. I can see the passion as you all talk, So I think you guys have got a long way and lots to achieve.
Yeah, and I think like Inakshi said, these are the personal stories which actually make this big difference. Like where we have the story of a girl who did not have access to basic schooling and today is studying at IIT Roorkee and civil engineering.
Wow.
We have a story of another boy named Ankur Jyoti. He he was in a place where the schools would get flooded and in Assam and the schools would be shut for days, sometimes months. Today he's a doctor in a government hospital in Assam. Right? So Inakshi can share many more stories, but these are the stories which inspire us.
I guess we need 3 hours of a podcast for that, or will be less.
And I think these personal wins really gives people the belief that this is for a better cause. In fact, they don't know maybe, but they are building India. The future of India is being built in the kind of interventions that are being provided by P&G through Shiksha to be able to uplift the people who will otherwise possibly not have the opportunities. And I think that's a great step in the right direction.
I'd love to bring you back into the conversation, Inakshi. Would you be able to walk us through how Shiksha is working with partner NGOs, especially in terms of training teachers, sensitizing parents, as we spoke about a little earlier, and building more inclusive classroom environments?
Absolutely. This is actually the biggest learning, if I could call, that we've had, right? Yeah. We've been at it for 20 years, but where we've been able to create sustained impact is where all stakeholders are coming together and working together, which means there is a role that we have the parents and the community play. We have, of course, a role that the teacher, the principal, the school administration playing. We have a role that the government is playing, and we have a role that programs like Shiksha and P&G are coming into play, right? When everyone comes together for the betterment of that one child or one group of children is when truly the magic happens.
Yeah.
So what we've been able to do is to ensure that we curate an environment. We very carefully choose our partners, if I could say that. We want them to be experts at their field, of course, but also believe in the larger cause, believe in continuing to learn, continuing to sort of keep our eyes and ears open to pick up any signals that come our way to say that, okay, we need to pivot. A very simple example comes to mind, right? We were talking about MindSpark and how the tool is really great. And one learning that we had now that we've been at it for a few years is the faster a child is able to erase the learning gap is linked to how much time they spend on the tool.
Right.
So we were able to work with the NGO and very quickly create a program where we are reminding the children and the parents that spend 30 minutes every day. And it's colloquialized, it's gamified, it's like 30 minute har din, simple things like that. But it's a reminder for them to keep doing that, right? Our early childhood program actually is completely with mothers. Mothers come in as volunteers. They come in, we do simple things like create WhatsApp groups with them. Pratham, our NGO, really trains them to then become leaders, not just for their own child, but for the larger community.
Yes.
In fact, one of the favorite stories that we have from 20 Tales, and we also had her join us today for the event, Lata Tai. She started her journey as a mother volunteer. She comes from this village called Vikramgarh, from the tribal areas of Maharashtra. And in becoming a volunteer and working with her child to develop his early thinking and education, she had a spark of going back to her education, right? So after 31 years, she had stopped her studies at class 7. She went back. She got her degree as, for class 10. And today she's working as an ASHA worker and taking the entire village forward. So again, these are the kind of stories that inspire us. And this truly shows that when everyone plays a role together, that is when the multiplier effect kicks in.
Yeah. I think that's why they say, right, it takes a village to raise a kid, right? And
Absolutely.
And even though we see that kids spend so much time in school, but home is still their primary ecosystem. So I think when you work
It's a starting point.
Yeah, when you work together is only when I think kids can flourish in this absolutely challenging world where I think the adults are trying to maneuver and come on the other side. I'm going to still continue to talk to you, on this one. As she said that, we bring in the parents to kind of create a community, create a system where both parent and the child can work together. Even the P&G data also shows that many parents and adults struggle to grasp what a learning gap means, right? Why do you think this awareness is so slow, and what can we do to kind of build this gap?
So one, I don't think we've observed our children carefully enough, and we are not being able to see the fundamental. If my child is studying for 3-4 hours a day and then going to school and not being able to get the results of the effort he's put, straight away that should awaken me as a parent saying that there's something wrong here, because the input, which is effort, and study, is not resulting in an output. So there is definitely something which should actually awaken a parent. But maybe they're not looking at it in these terms. They're not looking at causation and effect. Okay, so we have to observe behaviorally. It's not that my child is lazy, slothful, lackadaisical. He's working really hard. But when he goes there to actually see, the performance just doesn't match. It's not commensurate with the effort that he's put. Now, why is that so? It is because there may be some deficiency which has been overlooked. That could be one. And second, I think, all parents are protective about their children. I am, you are, all of us are.
Tell you that.
So we are sometimes, as human beings, the defense mechanism of denial. Okay, we do not want to accept that sometimes our children struggle. And then, of course, what happens is that the social set or the community that we belong to associates mistake making as the end of the world.
Yeah.
We do not encourage children, or even ourselves for that matter, to make mistakes. Now, if mistake making is going to be looked upon as a horror, as something that is going to define you, you will never want to admit that there may be something amiss, because for you that will mean that, you've admitted some limitation, right? So I think it's a psychological aspect, a whole restructuring of a mindset. And in fact, I think a famous Indian philosopher, Vinoba Bhave, said this, that when you admit you are wrong, you are born again.
Yeah.
So we have to ask ourselves that can we empower the child to say it's okay to make a mistake? Only what does a mistake say? It's a disadvantage or a little bit of more of a struggle.
Or a learning.
It's a learning.
Yeah.
It's a learning experience. Edison was asked by a journalist, didn't you feel bad that you made 15,000 mistakes? He smiled at the journalist and he said, 14,999 were learning experiences. Each trial taught me how to not make a light bulb. Right? So I think learning gaps will be filled when we go with the right mindset.
Yeah.
That one, be observant, look out.
Yeah.
There are evidences around you to detect that there's something amiss. Don't feel shame, okay? Accept that there may be something which is available to you, which you, if you use, will correct it.
Yes.
So please take all the tools available. And 3, I think we have to build mistake making as a way of life. That's how growth happens.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important that if you marry all these 3, all the efforts of P&G Shiksha, all the interventions become far easier to embrace. And then once you embrace something, it becomes so easier to get the productivity and the results there.
Yeah. The minute you started answering this question, and you said we ourselves as parents are not very quick to accept, because that itself is a challenge for a parent to accept that something is not right.
Right.
I think that doesn't sit well as a parent, saying, "Oh God, what am I going to do? Why my child?"
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of parents really do
Resist.
that. Yeah, to resist and
Resist.
say, "Okay." In fact, if you accept, you can help.
Correct.
If you're not accepting, your child is the one
In
who's
fact,
actually
I
suffering.
see acceptance as empowerment.
Absolutely.
That the
Yes.
minute I accept something, now I know, okay, I have it. How do I solve for it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope everyone listening to this podcast does realize, as guys, you just need to accept and
Yeah.
do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to close this very quickly with last 2 questions. One of them is to you, Enakshi. From your perspective, how does CSR become a meaningful driver of systematic change in education, especially in a country as diverse as India?
I think the starting point, at least for us at P&G, was not CSR.
Okay.
We've been doing this for even before CSR became a law in the country. We've been
Yes.
at this for 20 years. It started with the mission that P&G really has across our brands, across our presence, that we want to improve lives wherever we are operating. With that mission, we started focusing on education because it is really the greatest enabler. It is, there's very little else that empowers, not just a child, but a community like education does. So it is about that. It is about really looking at how can we continue down that road. But yes, the power comes from having the right partners, the right systems.
Yeah.
There's this term that we talk about at P&G called constructive disruption, which is really about being open to change and lead that change versus, sort of getting impacted by it.
Yeah.
And that's probably also the philosophy with which we've looked at Shiksha, right? We've remained very open to see, is the work that we are doing the best that we can? Is this what we can continue to create the maximum impact with? And wherever we've needed to pivot, we've pivoted. Be it, trying different models across different states, right?
Yeah.
Some states we directly go via our NGO partners and implement. In some states we work directly with the state governments. In some states we have mothers who are parts. In some states we have teachers who become volunteers. We have, in fact, adult students. One of my favorite things is, so many of our volunteers today were actually students themselves who have
Nice.
witnessed the impact. So they've come back, joined us as volunteers, and now they say, okay, you know what, I know this village, I know this community, I know the impact I've had, I want to work with you and sort of be able to create that, effect for more people.
Yeah.
It not just gives them a job or, improves employment opportunities, but it also gives the community a sense of someone like us, someone from within us has been able to do this. So therefore all of us can. So that's really the aim. If we can give every child a way to learn with understanding and a way to realize their potential, then we are very happy.
Yeah. This is a conversation that's very close to my heart, parenting and, education, but I do know that we don't have more time. So we'll have to kind of close this very interesting conversation. So I just want each of you, before we go, in one sentence, maybe if we can, to sum up, what is the one thing you want people to take away from this year's campaign? Would you like to start, Abhishek?
I think the first thing, or the most important thing I would like people to take away, is to become aware of this concept of learning gap. And awareness is the first step to fixing it, and that's why identify it and then remedy it.
Yes. Thank you.
Actually, if I could just double click on that. Many times, the learning gap is hidden in different things that get written off as, oh, the child is naughty, the child is lazy,
Yeah.
The child doesn't like doing this but likes something else. Maybe that's true, but maybe it's important to just double click and check.
Yeah.
And I would say that let's stop defining. Let's stop using adjectives, generalizing. Okay, let's instead describe. So I can describe myself as, oh, I may be a little slow in math, but I'm only slow in math. It doesn't become all encompassing. And all of us have limitations and all of us have abilities. Let's learn how to stop defining ourselves holistically so that we feel that we are hopeful in going towards the direction which comes more naturally and easily to us.
Thank you so much for talking to me, and yes, hoping many, many decades of successful campaign for P&G Shiksha. Thank you.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so much.
much.